Hi, friends. I'm Dr. Delphina JOYce, Messenger of Joy of Journey Options You Choose. And today is a joy workshop. We're so grateful and excited about our guest who is joining us. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about different opportunities that have to do with conflict. But before we dive in, let's be sure that we understand our disclaimer. And this disclaimer just identifies that Dr. Delphina JOYce, Joy Journey Options You Choose, and Eric McGregor, that we all are absolute professionals. However, we do not diagnose or provide prescriptions. So if you need any medical advice, please consult your medical professional. During this series, there are 5 different workshops that you will have the opportunity to take part in. The first one will be just looking at empathy, and that's what we're going to dive into today. On the second one, we're going to be looking at exploring. Third, we're going to look at innovation, all under the premises of the theme of conflict. And then we're going to navigate through difficult situations, and we're going to activate all of your skill sets. You guys are in for a treat because Eric is an expert when it comes to conflict resolution. There's 5 sessions. They're each an hour. They're all virtual, and you'll receive practical skills and tools to support you to be your best through all the conflict. You also get a free gift at the end of each one of these workshops. These are 5 ways for you to move forward in your communication skills and to be a much better communicator. So let me just show you what that looks like on a timeline. As you can see here, this is the series. You're going to gain clarity about your past. What are some of the things that trigger you? You're going to get some insight. We're going to create some alternatives to handling difficult situations. You're also going to be able to master some skills and reimagine some responses because sometimes uh, we can respond differently. And the more we know, the better we become. So I'm going to hand it over to our guest. Eric, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, my name is Eric McGregor, and I'm a mental fitness coach. And I specialize in relationships, in resilience, and performance, specifically in that order. Relationships being first, relationships with yourself, with circumstances, with others, with the world going on around you. Resilience, the ability to bounce back and put that pause and get back in the game. And then performance, it all comes from your relationships and your resilience. I've been doing this for a little while. I had an epiphany in my life and I never thought I'd have a calling. And one day I was literally walking the dogs and just stopped in my tracks and said, I know what I love to do and I'm good at it. So why don't I go get the credentials to do it? And it started off as health coaching. So I went to Duke and went to the integrative medicine there, got myself a certificate for a health coach. And in that journey, realized that it's difficult for people to change. And there's a lot of conflict in our lives, and stumbled upon mental fitness. And when I went through that program, it was initially going to be just a feather in the cap to help clients along, but it changed my life so profoundly that I scrapped my entire business and model, became a mental fitness coach. And I don't exclusively do that, but it is the barrier to entry for any health related, because what's in between the ears dictates how we view the entire world and all of our relationships. So, and that got me in touch with you, and that's where we are now.
Yeah, Eric, I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. We all know that everything starts right here. And so thank you for talking about in between the ears. That's what we're going to dive into, friends. Today, we're talking specifically about how to stop STOP, negative conflict. Listen, be heard, not hurt. And this is about empathy in conflict. So I'm going to hand it over to you. This is a workshop, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, this is a workshop designed to empower you with effective conflict resolution skills and stronger connections. And Eric, were you going to say something? My apologies.
No, I thought you had more to say, so I was just pausing there. There will be some pauses in here.
All right, awesome. So, friends, these are the instructional objectives. The sessions always have objectives because we want you to walk away with some powerful information. You're going to be looking at the knowledge that has to do with your psychological triggers and communication patterns. We're also going to identify skills to pinpoint unproductive conflict behaviors, and you're going to have the opportunity to learn a strategy for de-escalation and constructive communications. You will walk away with communication tools and mindful techniques. And always, whenever we come together, we are always operating in the joy mindset. And the joy mindset is journey options you choose. It's about your free will. So you're going to have practical resources and methods to implement your wellness first, because we want you to rise with confianza, which means to rise with confidence. Now I'm handing it over, Eric. It's all you.
Yeah, well, welcome. And this is about empathy in conflict. And this is a 5-part series. And when we talk about the stop model, it's really just the ability to put up the hand and say stop. By the time we're done with this, we'll understand what the 5 fingers mean. And this is the first finger, the smallest finger, and that finger is empathy. Empathy is the superpower. Empathy is what allows the door to open so that we can have constructive conflict. Anytime there's more than one person in life, and honestly, when I'm alone, I have conflict with myself, but anytime there's more than one person, you're going to have conflict. We have conflict. And the question is, how do we deal with it? And what do we make of it? Does it become something that's destructive? Does it become something that is bonding? So that's really what we find is our authentic voice in that disagreement, and ensuring that when we go through this, that there is clarity and that people feel heard before we enter into that conflict, because people who aren't heard feel hurt, and
Yeah.
they will not hear you until they feel heard.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm excited about what's to come because we're going to talk specifically about the stop model. We're going to talk about false positivity. What does that mean? And then we're going to dive deeper into empathy and what does it mean? So here is a question from the house. And the question from the house, Eric, is how do you specifically, find your authentic voice amidst disagreement? Like, how do you find your voice when you're in a disagreement?
That is an amazing question, and it's one that I didn't figure out for 40 plus years of my life. It really wasn't until I got into the mental fitness framework that I actually understood. In the mental fitness framework, we have what we call judges and saboteurs. So the first thing that we feel when we feel our feelings is generally the judge telling you that things aren't good enough, or that person is wrong, or I'm wrong, or the circumstance isn't enough. And then we bring in saboteurs. For me specifically, I'm very restless. I'm hyper rational. I like to solve problems. I'm a stickler, which means I like things done my way. That results, when there's conflict, of me just solving problems right away. And this is not a specific male problem, but anyone who's married knows that men like to solve problems. That's what we do. We solve problems. And oftentimes we overshout, or we talk to rather than listen. And I am guilty of that, and have been guilty of that, and was way more so in the past than I am now. And empathy is really that key. So my authentic voice when I wasn't paying attention was just to explain and to solve. But once I was able to step back and understand what that was doing to my relationships, I was able to pull out the empathy card and say, I don't have to solve everything. I just need to listen and have empathy. And even if I don't agree, even if I don't condone, I can, if I take the time, understand where someone's coming from and let them know that I know how they feel. If I was you, I would feel that way too. So finding that authenticity is really just about being able to engage in what someone else is feeling. We have the left brain and we have the right brain. Our left brain is our data brain. That's where we walk through life with. We're solving problems, we're analyzing, we're computer mode. Humans are not logical creatures until their emotions are met. So the right brain shifts on, and you're able to download and understand that emotion. And once that emotion is taken care of, then we can get into the solving if it's even necessary. So the clarity that I have now and the authenticity that I have now is that I'm the same person, but I'm a different person in the sense that I'm willing to pause now and I can hear what people are saying and understand where they're coming from. Even if I don't agree with it, I don't get caught up on that anymore. And I can let them know, hey, if I was you, I'd probably feel the same way too. And that opens up a lot of doors and resolves a lot of conflict just in itself.
Oh, yeah, that's so powerful, Eric, when you talk about you are in the situation, but you've learned how to not necessarily personalize it so much as into like, what is this person actually saying? And am I willing to hear, validate, and clarify what is this person saying, as opposed to taking everything personally, like, this is all about me. I'm gonna fix
Yeah,
you. And,
that's
and
right.
that's what escalates conflict is we want to personalize everything. This is all about me, right? And so thank you for sharing your voice and helping us to gain some clarity on how to really just handle some difficulties. Let's see, what else do we have here in store? The hidden costs of unresolved conflict. What can you tell us about this?
I can tell you a lot about it. Unresolved conflict leads to resentment, and resentment is a damaging thing in any relationship that lasts more than beyond the transactional occurrence. So, if you're going and you're buying a car, or you're at the supermarket, or you're just bumping into someone every once in a while, there's not a whole lot of unresolved conflict there. However, in life in general, the people that are closest to us, so the people that we see all the time, the people that we work with, the people that we live with, the people that we love, we're around them all the time. And when there's unresolved conflict, those layers start adding up. And we've all probably been in fights where you go, what are we, what are we even fighting about? What are we doing here? And a
Mhm.
lot of that is because what we're fighting about is just layers of sediment that's built up, and someone's angry about something, but what you're actually fighting about is what happened before. It was, the straw that broke the camel, the proverbial straw that broke the camel back. And so they have finally had enough, or you have finally had enough. And now you're fighting about something, or you're having conflict about something. And there's so many intertangled webs that it's hard to sort through. So the unresolved conflict, the hidden cost of it is not even really hidden. It's a gigantic time waste if you're in the professional world, because you're solving problems that should have been solved before. You're working through things, and you're less performance based than you otherwise would be, and you're less resilient because you're solving for things that aren't even necessarily apparent. And in your personal life, man, if you have children, mothers, fathers, wives, husbands, people that are close to you, there's a lot of baggage in there, and that unresolved conflict is a hidden cost. And that's why there's tension in every family gathering. That's why there's tension around the dinner table. That's why kids act up. That's why parents yell at kids. The unresolved hidden conflicts in relationships is it's more costly than most people would think. But once you actually sit down and think about it for a second, it becomes pretty obvious. Like, oh yeah, that happens to me a lot in my life. So something for people to think about is that unresolved conflict and the hidden cost of it.
Yeah. And, when you talk about like this idea of a bridge, how conflict can create a bridge. So, this is a question from the house, and what is the biggest personal or professional cost you've paid due to unresolved conflict? And friends, if you're out there and you have access to the chat as well as the Q&A, remember that you can put your questions in the chat and we will move them to the screen so people can see them. You can do that anonymously. And you can also put information in the chat. So I'd like you to just take a moment, pause. What is the biggest personal or professional cost you've paid due to unresolved conflict? What about you,
For
Eric?
for me, it's fairly easy. There are massive ones that I could share, and I'm a big believer in vulnerability. Vulnerability means that I'm going to be open as I can, and I might be hurt for it, but the result is always better than it would be if I was closed off. So in our personal lives and relationships, and in my personal and professional business and relationships, I'm always going to be vulnerable. What you see is what you get, and I'm willing to put myself out there and be hurt. So I don't mind telling you that there was a point in my life where my life was chaos, and I was almost divorced, and I was working multiple jobs and going back to school. But really, the biggest personal price that I paid, and I'd like to say that the professional life, I'll hit that one real quick. The professional one is that I didn't get into this business as soon as I wish I would have, because I was based on fear, and I was worried about if I was good enough. I didn't know the path forward. So that's the professional, but the personal is that when I went through the mental fitness program, and I decided this is something that I was going to practice for life because it changed me so much, I had realized that I missed out on a good chunk of my children's lives, and that is not hyperbole. I told you before that I'm restless. Restless means that I go from one thing to the next. I'm constantly thinking about what it is that I need to do next. And while I was a present and loving father and husband, I was always thinking about what's next. Does the lawn need mowed? Do I need to take care of the boat? Does something in the garage need to be done? What needs to be done for work? Always thinking about what's next, what's next, what's next. I literally eat, and I still do, standing up. I'm a restless person. I always will be.
Mhm.
However, what I realized in going through this is that through lack of empathy and with the restlessness is that when my kids were talking, I was just waiting for them to be done so I could either speak or get on to my next thing.
Mhm.
Having practiced self mastery and mental fitness now and having empathy for other people has allowed me to pause and be where I am. Everything else can wait. I am still restless in the sense that I get a lot of things done. But when I am here, I'm here with you. When I'm here with my children and my wife, and it is the only thing that matters. And I don't mind saying to people now, hey, can you hold on? If my kids want to talk to me, I don't mind telling them, hey man, dad will be with you in 5 minutes or so. You deserve my full attention. And I'm doing something. And rather than segmenting it, I now take the time to wrap up what I'm doing, be transparent with people, have empathy for them, and then fully engage what I do. So for me, it's still a fair amount of being a father.
Yeah, I appreciate what you say in that is that whole idea of being present in the moment. And that can be challenging when we have a brilliant mind that is going and thinking about all these other things and doing things. But what a powerful position and a powerful stance to make that you're willing to be present. And because of the work that you've done, you've been able to resolve some of the other greater challenges that have happened. Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate your vulnerability on
I,
that.
I did want to say one more thing because I want to give hope for the people out there who feel restless too, who feel like they're drawn and feel like they're a frazzled ball of yarn. I got held back in second grade. I have ADHD. I'm all over the place. My mind goes a million miles an hour. I have sheets full of ideas. I have inventions. I have business plans. I am, in general, a high strung, wired person who has ADHD. Even if you have that, there's hope and there is peace that you can find in still being restless, still being creative, still being driven, but the ability to be present. So if any of you out there are feeling like, that's, it sounds like me, but I got ADD or whatever it is, just know that with practice, it is very, very possible that you can be present in your lives and others' lives as well.
I agree. I agree because I have lived experience. So, when I was younger, I remember, sounds so bad, but I remember like being in sixth grade and my teacher throwing an eraser at me, and I remember throwing the eraser back. And I just loved my teacher, but really, poor educator. He was just like, "Can you just close your mouth and listen?" And
Sounds very familiar. Very familiar.
And in that same year, I had another teacher tell me, you have so much potential if you could just learn how to use your power to be able to do good, right? And that's what I needed to learn. And it's taken me many years, but I have learned how to quiet my mind. I have learned how to slow down. I still get triggered. Like if I'm in the middle of something and my phone is ringing, and really the best decision is do not answer. Do not answer. You're
Yeah.
not in that mindset, right? But every once in a while I'll answer and then I'm like short. I'm short because I'm in the middle of something like, why are you disturbing me? So It's good to acknowledge that. It's good to acknowledge who we are as humans and to be loving towards ourselves because we all have differences in our styles and our behaviors. So, thank you, Eric, for sharing that. And yes, friends, if you have a high level of energy or you struggle with being present in the moment, there is hope. You can learn strategies and skills and techniques to just improve your presence and how to be here grounded in the moment. So let's dive into what we're here today, and this is one of the strategies. This is the stop model, and Eric, you started to talk to us about that, and now we're going to be diving in with this. So, what can you tell us about the stop model?
The stop model, it's interesting because you and I, we approach things differently, obviously, because we're two different people in two different classes of education in two different worlds. You have a stop model that works very well, and then I have a stop model that's a little bit different. So in my stop model, really what it is the hand. I mean, we all know the stop sign for the hand. And then as we go through this, like we talked about the pinky is here's yours if the viewers can see the slides. So for you, it's stop, think, observe, proceed. And that is a wonderful explanation because a lot of what we talk about in the system that I run is what I call lengthening the fuse. Anytime we have external stimulus, that dynamite fuse gets lit. And my fuse used to be real short. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about how it was going to impact other people. I didn't think about empathy or exploration or creativity or purpose or any of those things. I just came out with solving the problem or whatever came to mind, defending myself, feeling resentful, feeling frustrated. In this, the two different stop models that we're talking about now, the simple framework that you have on the screen is beautiful because it is stop. There is no weakness in the pause. Weakness comes from the fact that we allow our emotions to drag us and to pull us and to steer us rather than us being in control of our emotions. The pause allows us to think about what we're doing, to think, observe what is this going to do, and then before I proceed and when I proceed, how do I best do this? What tool do I use? And by the time we're done with this 5-part series, we're going to have more than one tool. Right now, we're talking about empathy. That's the first tool, and it is the best tool because it is the one that allows us to open that door of communication and not kick it in. Nobody appreciates their door getting kicked in, but if you knock nicely and you got some Girl Scout cookies, they're probably going to let you in. So in this one, stop, think, observe, proceed. I will couple that with the hand, and we will go through these real quick. The pinky is the smallest, but it is extremely effective. That is the empathize. The ring finger is where the ring goes all the way around, and that's explore. The middle finger, not to be rude, but everyone knows what the middle finger means. Break it and create it. Find something new to do. The pointer finger, navigate. And then the thumb, that's why we're humans. That's why we can build things. This is our action hand. So stop not only reminds you to stop what you're doing, pause, stop, think, observe, proceed. It also gives you a cheat sheet to what tool do I want to use now?
Mhm, mhm. So, can you quickly go over that again? So, do you start with the pinky?
I do. I always do. I didn't used to because I think once you start doing something, things get complicated and then they tend to be complicated for a long time. And then once you've been doing them for a long time, everything seems to simplify again. I don't think that it's necessarily possible to have conflict until there's empathy, until someone feels heard. It is very difficult for them to listen to what you're saying because they know that you're just trying to solve or you're trying to be right or you're arguing on the positional level. So
Mhm,
that empathy, I think, is key in order to knock on that door and not just kick it in. So yeah, so pinky being the smallest, and that's the first one. That's empathy. Your ring finger, the ring is a circle. Explore. The middle finger is the creativity. Screw it.
mhm,
F it.
mhm,
Create. The pointer
mhm,
finger, we all know what that does. That points, that's the direction. That's how we navigate. That's when we find what's purposeful in life. Is this going to matter at the end of my life, at the end of this conversation, at the end of this marriage? And then the thumb, that's what makes us human. That's how we build things. That's action. When we take action, we resolve conflict.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's there are different models to the stop model, and this one's using the hand. And Eric gave us the empathy, and he gave us the other. I really like this one because, sometimes think, let me share. I love exploring. Like exploring is like you're thinking about it, it's full circle. I affect you, you affect me. We are interrelated, right? You talked about the saboteur and you talked about how things are handled. But the middle finger, thinking about like how can we recreate this? How can we, sometimes we have to disengage and to really just dissolve things and transmute things and change things. And so that level of creativity is very important because to be able to look outside of myself, and that was something we talked about, right? Like as a person in conflict, like I want to personalize everything. Ah, I'm being attacked. Ah, you don't hear me. Ah, you don't understand, right? And so sometimes being able to impersonalize it and that this isn't about me. Can I come above this idea? Can I come above the conflict to be able to see differently? And empathy is so powerful. And acknowledging that we are human. We are human. We all do things differently, and that's important. So here's another example of the stop where you just stop, you pause, you think, you observe, and you proceed. And this will be one of the gifts that you'll be receiving. You'll be receiving a free gift that has the stop model. So Eric, this is a question that came from the group, and it is, how can applying the stop model transform your next disagreement into a moment of clarity and mutual understanding?
I love this. This will make a whole lot more sense after we're done with the five of them, but we did talk about the stop model and we did talk about what the five fingers do. And when you talked about the creativity, we all have experience with watching, an old couple fighting about things for the thousandth time. It's like
Mhm.
they're still bickering on the same things, and they're 80 years old. Well, the creativity would have, the innovation would have got them there. Hey, if you do what you always did, you get what you always got. Whatever you're doing is not working, so we got to break it, and we got to figure out something else to do, and we can do that on our own, or we can do that generatively. But most importantly, the stop model takes a look at slowing those things down, lengthening the fuse, allowing that exploration, maybe not solving a problem, but the problem. If you walk into the house after you've been invited in and you see the house is on fire, you might be inclined to go put the first one out, but maybe that's just a little ember. And so taking a step back and look at the entire picture, that's what the exploration really means is what is what does this whole thing look like? Not just the first thing. What does the whole thing look like? And what's the problem that we really need to solve? Not just a problem. So
Mhm.
not only does it allow you to lengthen that time out, to use the empathy to explore, to make sure that the problem that you're solving is the problem, not a problem. You're not chasing embers when there's a fire. You're dealing with the important and not necessarily the urgent. It also allows you to be creative, like we talked about. If what you've done before, if you're fighting about the same thing again, chances are you didn't do it right the first time. So why do it the same way again? And then having purpose. Like there's a lot of fights that aren't even worth taking.
Mhm.
Most of
Mhm.
them will resolve themselves. Napoleon famously never opened his email, never opened his mail for 3 weeks after he got it because
Mhm.
he knew that most problems would resolve themselves. So having that idea of what's important here, what's going to seem important at the end of this marriage or this relationship or this business or this project or your life, and what's not going to seem important, and
Mhm.
then coming up with a way to move forward, enabling that action and actually doing something. Because a lot of times we talk about it, but we don't get started. And we'll get into that later with the action of like, what do we do when it feels difficult? But that's how the stop model really dissolves the conflict and makes it into something productive.
Yeah. And so, friends, we're ready to move into false positivity. So, when I was thinking about this, I was like really jazzed up about this. And the reason I'm really jazzed up about this is that when conflict happens, it's so easy to undermine the actual experience and to be bubbly. And I share this from me, like being messenger of joy, journey options you choose. Sometimes people can think that uh, I am, yay, happy go lucky, and I really am. But that does not mean that I write off, and it doesn't mean that joy writes off reality and situations that will be happening. And so, false positivity is an excellent acknowledgement of what can happen and what does that actually mean. So let's look at, what does false positivity actually mean? It's all you, Eric.
False positivity, we talked about, we come from different views. I talk about negative positivity. So false positivity, negative positivity are pretty much the same thing. And one thing that I talk to all the people who travel with me about is, this is not woo woo. This is not negative positivity. This is not false positivity. This does not mean that hard decisions aren't made. This doesn't mean that you don't sometimes cut people out of your lives, or have to fire someone in business, or have that hard conversation. And in fact, it means quite the opposite. But you are approaching it in a different manner. If you avoid things, the monster gets bigger.
Mhm.
Dealing with little monsters is a lot easier than dealing with big monsters. And when
Mhm.
we're avoiding the discomfort, we're avoiding that confrontation, what we end up doing is, one, ignoring it and letting it be bigger and fester, and then those layers start to build up. And like we talked about before, why are we fighting about the things that we're fighting about? Well, because we didn't resolve them in the first place. So
Mhm.
that understanding that it is not just rainbows all the time, and that negative feelings are there for a real reason. The question is, are you going to stay there? So in the framework that we like to talk about, that I like to talk about, is that negativity is like a spotlight. That spotlight illuminates something in your life, or your relationships, or your circumstance, that needs to be addressed. If you don't address it, you're going to have building frustration, anxiety, anger, resentment. Now, how you deal with it, that's where the stop model comes in.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So when you reference you and the other word choice is negativity, right? So in this reference, the way it's being described is the negativity of avoiding, not handling. And in this reference, the false positivity is the same. It's avoiding the discomfort that comes with conflict. It's avoiding the confrontation, avoiding the conversation, masking the actual issues that are at hand by addressing them indirectly or not addressing them at all. And so as we dive in, false positivity is just this. It refers to an insincere or superficial display of optimism, cheerfulness, or agreement, especially in situations that warrant honest discussions, concern, or conflict resolution. And so one of the things that Eric talked about is like, sometimes there is a termination. There is a changing in power. So instead of genuinely exploring these challenges, the false positivity encourages one to ignore them and pretend that they don't exist. So if there's a conflict in work and we are choosing to not address it, a person who's sarcastic, a person who's mean, a person who's bossy, a person who's rude, and we're not actually addressing those types of behaviors, and instead we're just glazing over it like, that's just how that person is. False positivity can lead to a culture where difficult topics are brushed aside, preventing true growth and understanding. I will share with you an experience of this. So, I was working for an organization. It was brand new. It was a baby organization. And the organization was experiencing rapid growth. And I was hired into a position, an executive position. And I was hired to oversee other work projects and individuals that oversaw those projects. And so, in order to become abreast, aware of all these things, there was certain data that I needed. And there was an individual who was unhappy with my hiring. And so that individual chose to withhold information, wouldn't share spreadsheets, went behind my back to say other things to different people. And it was just a very uncomfortable situation. And it would have been easy for me to not address it and ask directly, I need this data enabled for me to be able to do these things. The situation ended up growing. And as I went to my supervisor to address it, my supervisor said to me, well, it's just a matter of developing relationship. It was bigger than that. And the supervisor didn't see the power structure that was involved. So a false positivity would have just written that off like, oh, whatever, we'll figure it out. And things like that don't directly address the situation. And so, in order for conflict to be resolved, there are situations where it needs to be directly address the behaviors that are actually happening. So, Eric, what are your thoughts? And here's a question from the house. If you already consider yourself a positive person, what's the difference between being positive and making others feel seen and validated? Because in my situation, when I was talking about like false positivity, would have just written it off like, oh, it's no big deal. And that's actually, in a sense, what the supervisor did. The supervisor said, oh, you just got to develop a relationship. And all that supervisor did was write off the situation, which didn't directly address the behaviors that were being exhibited. So talk to me about, you know, what about this? If you're a positive person, like, how do you handle this?
For a lot of people, this depends on the personality type that they are. We're all different people. I've always been a very direct person. You know what you're getting with me. I've always been the kind of person that addresses things pretty early on, but we all stack stuff up and we all gather a certain amount of frustration and resentment, especially if you're dealing with people on an ongoing basis. So this can look very different depending on the personality type that there is. If you have someone who's a controller type, which all of us have a little controller in us, but if you have someone who's a high-driven controller type, someone who is the boss type, someone who in business or a relationship is the boss type, they're going to innately control situations on the regular, situations that need control and situations that don't need control. And
Mm-hmm.
as a result, they may seem like they have everything under control. the
Mm-hmm.
real the real truth is that they're spending a whole lot of energy controlling things that they don't need to control, and so they start to feel resentful. I just have to do everything myself. No one else is willing to step up and do it. I have to do
Mm-hmm.
it, no matter what it is. I got to take control of it because no one ever does it right. No one wants to. The truth of the matter is that the people around them learn, you know what, no matter what, Eric's just going to do it anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
why even put, maybe for the first couple of times they try, and then I just take control. I'm not an over
Mm-hmm.
controlling type, but people who are, they just take control over and over again. And the people around them learn, you know what? He or she's just going to do it anyway. So why even try?
Yeah.
Now on the other end of the spectrum, you have the pleaser types. And we all know the pleaser types. They are wonderful people and they want to do things to help people, but they can't say no. So they end up saying yes to everything. And as a result, that's a false positivity as well, because they're saying yes to the things that they don't have time to do, that they don't want to do. And people,
Mm-hmm.
again, just assume, you know what? She just wants to do it. She loves helping. He just likes to help us out. And as a result, the people around them just get used to that person saying yes. But in the back of that person's mind now, they start to build resentment. Why am I always the one to do this? I don't get the thanks for this. No one's offering to help. But the truth of the matter is that they have before, and you just took over so many times doing the pleasing thing that it becomes a who you are, and the people around you just get used to that. And so on both ends of the spectrum with the controller, they're doing way more than they should be and controlling way more than they should and building resentment. And then the pleaser's doing the exact same thing, but just in a different vein. Both of those are wonderful attributes. There are some things that really need people to take control of them, but it's not everything. And there are some things that people really should do because they want to do them. But they
Mm-hmm.
have to ask themselves, am I doing this because I want to do it or because I can't say no? And both of those lead to negative positivity.
Yeah, yeah. And you talked about oh, the word is going, but when you talk about like the saboteur and I was just thinking about archetypes. and
Hmm.
how they fall into this realm. So thank you, Eric, for sharing the people pleaser as well as the controller and how they handle conflict in different ways and how to be able to manage through those things. And this question was specifically, and I know you're going to dive into this when we talk about empathy. How do you see people and how do you validate feelings and emotions? And as we move forward and we dive into empathy, that's going to come around. And so let's see what happens as we move forward. Here are some examples of false positivity in conflict resolution. And one example is refusing to acknowledge negative feelings. There's no need to be angry. Let's just be positive. That invalidates people's feelings. Feelings are real. And you see this sometimes it's difficult, like in a grieving process, when someone's passed, like we don't always know how to handle that. We don't always have the skill set to handle that. Also, forcing a smile and an upbeat tone while discussing serious problems make others feel like their concerns are being trivialized, like they're not really important because you're smiling and you're like, I'm talking to you about something serious here, and sometimes people just don't have the skill set to handle the emotions, and that's something that can be learned. Also, it's fine, don't worry about it. Just undermining and minimizing someone's emotions. When someone's clearly upset or uncomfortable but feels pressured to maintain peace, when someone has a false positivity of like, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, everything will be fine, that is not being empathetic. That is false positivity where you're uh, glazing over the emotions of the individual of what's happening. Let's just agree to disagree when core issues remain unresolved and will likely resurface. And this is something that we talked about, like in long-term relationships or things like that, where there's a conflict that just continues to happen, but we don't actually address that. Anything you want to share about this, Eric?
You said it perfect. It's just all about being human. It's why I named my business what I named it. Like we're all being human here, and everyone is a little bit different. So yeah, understand that validating people's feelings and what they're going through at the time, even if it seems trivial, it's important.
Yeah, being able to acknowledge what is the feeling, what is the emotion, what's at play in this now. So we've got a question in the house. It's how can you tell the difference between creating peace and silencing discomfort? What are your thoughts on that?
How can you tell the difference between creating peace and silencing discomfort? I don't know that you can create peace, and I don't know that you can silence discomfort. Going back to what we talked about a little earlier, we're all different. For a 15-year-old, the worst thing that's ever happened to them is the worst thing that's ever happened to them. Maybe it's having their phone taken away. And that seems like so trivial. But if
Hmm.
you're 80 years old, probably the worst thing that's ever happened to you is pretty bad. But if you put it on the spectrum of what the reality of it is to a 40-something-year-old, of course, like, oh, so what? They got their phone taken. That's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. Um, I don't know that creating peace is even possible, and I don't know that I would want to, and I don't know that silencing discomfort is possible, and I don't know that I would want to. I think that personally, sitting and being uncomfortable allows us the space to breathe and to figure it out, as long as we don't root ourselves in negativity. Negativity is a lot like pulling the fire alarm or putting your hand on a hot stove. It's
Hmm.
very useful for identifying something, like we talked about before, a spotlight on something. But what's not useful is staying in the burning building or keeping your hand on the hot stove until it burns down to the bone. So that discomfort is putting a spotlight on something in your life that's creating the discomfort or is now allowing you to be peaceful. So, what are we going to do to acknowledge that and to move forward now? Well, empathy is a great start. Hey, I know this doesn't seem like a big deal to a lot of people. And to me, it doesn't really feel like a big deal because I've been through so much in my life. However, if I was you and I was 15 and my phone was the timeline to all of my friends and all of the activities going on, I can really understand how that would be devastating and that you'd be completely upset. That that amount of empathy now opens the door to explore, to create, to find out what the purpose is, and to take action. So, sitting with that discomfort, being comfortable, being uncomfortable until we figure it out.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And I think silencing discomfort is the idea of shutting a person down. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that doesn't matter. Everything will be fine. I think that's what that silencing discomfort is. And here's some examples of false positivity in why it is problematic. So we talked about examples of, writing off someone's feelings, and now here's why false positivity is problematic. It's problematic because it erodes trust. If I, for example, come to you, Eric, and I have my feelings on the table and I'm expressing to you some challenge or something like that, and you just say, "Don't worry about it, Delphina, everything will be fine." With time, or even within that moment, it will erode my trust because I will begin to believe that I cannot talk to you because you don't actually hear me. You're not actually listening to what I have to say. And it also invalidates emotions. It can foster resentment and it can limit growth. So I have an experience. I have an individual in my life who I love very, very dearly. However, this individual is not very skilled with empathy. And so when I had hurt my Achilles tendon, when I tore my Achilles tendon, I remember this person asking me how I was feeling. And I said, well, I was down, like I couldn't do all the things I needed to do. And I felt very vulnerable. I needed help for everything. I couldn't walk, and I remember learning in my mind, that was about the third or fourth time I had talked to this person about challenges in my life in time, when we talk about timelines, right? And I remember, and the person was always just a very strong person and said, like, "Oh, snap out of it. You'll be fine," But what I learned, and now in this experience, because I love this person very dearly, what I've learned is that I cannot go to that person when I want to be heard, and I'm really looking for empathy, and I'm looking for sympathy, and I'm looking for someone to understand me. I don't go to that person for that anymore because that person doesn't do that. Their answer is snap out of it, grow up, put on your big girl panties and move forward, march on. And that for sometimes is great. For other times it's not great. So false positivity can be problematic because it can erode trust, it can invalidate people's emotions, it can foster resentment, and it can limit growth. Anything you have to say on this, Eric?
I think that's a beautiful story in terms of just the Achilles tendon. First of all, for people who don't know, that's the biggest tendon in your body, and that is not something that you just snap. You do snap it, but it's nothing that you just snap out of. Like that's the real deal. However, that really illustrates why we're all here, why I do what I do, why you do what you do. Is because many people carry a single tool in their tool belt, and they just use it and use it and use it, and it was successful for them when they were young. It's successful for them in business and in personal life, but it gets overused. And many people forget that there are other tools. Like you said, that is a good tool when we're in the desert and we need to keep marching, or when we're in the weight room and we want to rack one more set, or when we're on the court and we need to get the team going. Those are useful tools when they're properly applied. It's not a useful tool when someone wants to feel heard, and it's probably not that the person is uncaring, because that would have been me 5 years ago. That would have been me. Hey, you know what? You're gonna be fine. You do well. You know what we're gonna do? I'm really good at physical rehabilitation. I do functional corrective movement. We're gonna come up with a plan to get you back on your feet. That's not what you wanted to hear. What you wanted to hear was, how you feeling? Like, what are you going through? Um, what does the next little while look like for you? And how's that impacting you? What can I do to help? And once that was opened up, that may have opened up the conversation for being able to do something like that. But the truth is just it shut them down. And even though they probably are a caring person, they don't have the dexterity to use that tool of empathy. And that's one thing. That's why we're here right now, is because a lot of us don't have that tool of empathy, and we're going to learn those. We're going to put more than one tool in your tool belt. A lot of us are used to just using a hammer, but a hammer is not a great tool for everything. So we need to have other tools. So I think that was a beautiful explanation of why people get driven away in certain circumstances.
Yeah. I like that. I definitely need more tools for sure. So I appreciate the learning and the growth. So here's a question that was in the chat. Have you ever tried to stay positive in a conflict and later realize it actually shut the other person down?
uh, all the time, especially in my former life. Staying positive, the example that you used is a perfect one. And there are so many times, especially as a father, that you just want to tell your kids to, like, lace up, get over it, try harder. We have 5 rules in House McGregor, and they're all pretty simple. But the first one is do the right thing. And the second one is to tell the truth. Third one is to be kind. And I think that we forget sometimes to be kind, and we skip over that. And the false positivity sometimes will come in the fact that it is so glaringly obvious what the solution to someone's problem is, because you have stepped back and you don't have the tanglements. And I mean, how many times in all of our lives have we gone, why does this person not see how obvious the mistake is that they're making?
Hmm.
They're not listening to me. Well, of course they're not listening to you, because you're either telling them just to get over it, or you're using that false positivity, and you haven't used that empathy to really understand. You haven't explored, and you haven't been creative and to come up with things. And sometimes problems just can't be solved, and it's beyond us. There are lots of problems that don't need to be solved. But even the ones that do need to be solved and are obvious are always better served with bringing empathy into the equation first, so that person knows, hey, you know what? Eric understands me. They just said that they asked the right questions. They referred back to me what it is that I'm going through, and they said they understand. And now that they understand, I'm much more willing to be vulnerable and be open to that conversation. So, yeah, before I got into the mental fitness portion of it, I just would have fixed everything without ever pulling out that empathy tool.
Hmm. Hmm. Excellent points. Excellent points. So false positivity ultimately avoids genuine resolution. It sweeps things under the carpet and it puts a band-aid on the actual situation. So it prevents a thorough examination of the root causes of conflict, leading to temporary fixes that don't last. And that's where that resentment can come in. So I'm glad that we got to talk about false positivity. To kind of move into closure on this spot is how can we authentically acknowledge difficult emotions and navigate conflict constructively without resorting to false positivity? Your thoughts?
This question I didn't know was coming, and I was actually just thinking about that, and I missed out an opportunity on the last one, and that is that we solve other people's problems. We solve other people's problems, but we're not them.
Mhm.
We are not them. We don't know the obstacles in their lives. We don't know their setbacks. We don't know their traumas. We don't know what their schedule looks like. We don't know. I'm a driven person. I'm pretty disciplined. I stay on a pretty regiment schedule for working out, for eating, for self-care. Uh, I do that. And to me, there's freedom in that discipline. So
Mhm.
when I see other people that are struggling with things, it's easy for me to go, I have the solution for them. But what I learned in going through Duke Integrative Medicine, and what I learned through becoming a mental fitness coach, is that I am not them, and I can't solve problems for them. All I can do is gently guide them and allow for the landscape to unfold. And as we start to understand and empathize with someone, we understand more about what their situation is, what their lived experience is, what it is that they're going through, the obstacles that they're running into, why little things seem hard for them. The smallest step in the world might be that they just buy a pair of gym shoes, or that they, substitute one bag of chips a day for an apple, or they might, just work on, before they ever say anything else to someone when someone's having a problem, that they just use the words, how you feeling?
Mhm.
Little things that seem simple to us because we have done them so many times that we make it look easy, are not easy to people, and we assume that they are. So that false positivity, um, it becomes authentically you, in the sense that you're solving problems, but it's not really who you want to be. It's certainly not who I would want to be. You're probably hearing dogs right now. So I don't resort to that anymore, and nothing good constructively comes from not reaching for empathy first.
Yeah, yeah, your baby back there is agreeing with you. He's like, "Bruh, yes, go, yeah." Because it's so true, so true, right? Like, for me, acknowledging difficult emotions is really being able to name the emotion. And sometimes I can name an emotion and it's not the correct emotion. And it's important to do that because if I name the emotion, it's not the correct emotion, then another person can, the person who I'm talking to would be able to define that. Like, no, I'm not angry. I'm actually upset, but that it doesn't involve anger or something like that. And then navigating conflict constructively is when we went back to like, you can use the stop method, and that does support that and you don't have to minimize, but there are different ways to handle situations. And I appreciate how you consistently go back to the individual's person's emotions. And now my slide pages have disappeared here. There we go.
My dogs barked them out of existence.
They did, they did. So we looked at false positivity, we looked at conflict resolution, we talked about putting a band-aid on it, and then we ended with false positivity on how we can authentically maneuver through it. And here are some examples, once again, to close on false positivity, is it when negative emotions exist and we acknowledge them. Acknowledge fear, anger, frustration, hurt. That's a human experience. That's not false positivity. That's actually being real and genuine on, and I talked about like acknowledging what is the emotion? Name it. What is it? Emotions serve a purpose. And Eric, you've said this again and again that your emotions, there's not a negative nor a positive. It's an emotion. It's energy in motion. And that conflict is not avoidable. We're humans existing in this life and we have differences. And so there's nothing wrong with conflict. There's nothing wrong with difficult conversations. It's having the skills to be able to maneuver through them in a constructive way. And tough decisions are a part of life. Sometimes difficult actions are necessary. Anything you want to say about this, Eric?
Difficult actions are sometimes necessary. Ask people, how you
Yeah.
feeling? Get good at it.
Yeah. And listening, right? So the key principle behind this is that you can't do better last time, but you can do better next time. The simple truth frees us from the prison of regret and it opens the door to growth. Every interaction is an opportunity to apply what we've learned. It gives us the strength to be a better person, the knowledge, the skills, and the tools to be able to handle interactions that may be uncomfortable. Anything else you want to share, Eric, on closing on this?
That's a mantra that I use over and over and over and over again. I can't do better last time, but I can do better next time. And I literally say that to people. Hey, you know what? This didn't go like I wanted it to. And I'm sorry. And I can't go back in time. But if I could, I'd do things a little differently. And next time I can promise you that I will do them a little bit differently. Maybe not perfect, but I'll get a little bit better. And one thing that does is it frees up a lot of energy. We only have so many units of energy. And a lot of us spend the energy in the past reliving what we would have done, but not in a constructive way. And then we live in the future of what's going to come when we do what we should have done in the past. So we're using up 2/3 of our energy for things that don't exist, the past and the future. And if we can resolve that quickly in the past and go, I can do better next time by having empathy or by
Mhm.
exploring or any of the 5 things that we're going to talk about in the future. Then you can have a plan for the future. You can release that from the past. You can have a plan for when it comes in the future so you don't stop thinking about it in the past and the future. Those are gone now. And you can come back to being present.
Yeah, agree. Well, friends, it's 11:59 and we're coming up on our hour. And this is really exciting because you had the opportunity to learn about the STOP framework and you also learned about pausing, the importance of that. And we also looked at false positivity. So next time we are going to be doing empathy because we're coming up on our hour, but I want to remind you what joy
Explore.
is.
Explore next time.
Explore. Yeah, but we still have to dive into empathy. We didn't get a chance to do empathy in this one, so we're gonna dive into empathy. We have lots more slides to finish, but since we're on our hour, we're closing up on this session, and we'll be getting together to do our empathy one. That's what I was saying, Eric. My
Okay,
bad.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So joy means journey options you choose. It's all about your personal agency, and we always like to end with this. Let's see if this is working right here. My my mouse is struggling, as you can see here. There we go. There we go. Joy is your free will. It starts with self-leadership. Your next steps this week, your next session and long term. So practice some pause, practice the stop method. The next session, we're going to dive even deeper. And Eric said we're going to do the explore. What's one key takeaway you'll integrate into your wellness? Eric?
I have on my wrist that I write down every day something that I'm working on. And today I am working on doing a mental check of what my mood is. So I set a timer on my watch, and every hour I go, how am I feeling? Am I positive? Am I negative? Am I stuck on something? So things that I work on are things like that. So today I'm going to just be rechecking with myself. Where's my mood? And remembering that my default mode, my autopilot, I can break that.
I like that. I like that. And sometimes it's important to know that there's something called a joy crasher. And so a joy crasher is something that can challenge your commitment to integrating your key wellness learning. So Eric, you talked about on your wrist, you've got something that's mentally checking into yourself. What might be a joy crasher that can interrupt your commitment to integrating that wellness into your learning?
Well, for me, I put it there so I remember when I wash my hands, when I'm eating, when I look at my watch. I set my watch timers. But I mean, if I don't do that, everything does. Everything these days is urgent. We have emails, we have text messages, we have phone calls, we have kids to pick up, we have soccer to go to, we have lawns to mow, we have we have just constant barrage of things, and we don't get to check in and be present. So if I didn't do these things, joy crashers would be like a starlit night, just meteors streaking everywhere. I have to do this, or I will have a joy crasher every moment of every day.
Yeah, so you choose a joy crasher could be something that stills your thought of what it is that you're going to do because there's other things that are vying for your time, right?
Absolutely.
So you choose, you have your hand or your fish to help you. It's yours. We've taught you about the stop method, and now you get to use that method for your growth and your conversations. And um, we went over embracing the joy mindset, which is journey options you choose. We want you to rise with confidence, confianza, and that is happening because you have tools and skills and strategy. We've given you the knowledge about false positivity. We've given you the strategy of stop, and you'll have that tool that we're going to share with you. And you have the skill of understanding now what are these possible false positivity behaviors that can happen to us. We have a gift for you today. You'll be receiving this via email. It is the Stop Negative Conflict Toolkit, and it will have these strategies for conflict. And we also will be giving you the stop framework so that you can use that. And navigating your disagreements, this is how you can handle it by pausing, which is what Eric had said. So we thank you for your time. We're very grateful that you have given us your time, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Anything else that you'd like to say, Eric?
Just pause, ask people how they're feeling, and get good at not being good at it. It's going to be clumsy at first. Just work on it, and I'm really excited for the next ones that are coming up and to provide more tools in the tool belts and how to use them.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise, teaching us about the stop, teaching us about pausing, and then also having the opportunity to learn about positive, uh, what was it? False. It's because there's the contradicting, right?
Negative
False
positivity, false positivity.
positivity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Friends, you have a beautiful day ahead, week ahead, whatever time you're watching this, and we look forward to seeing you again for our next workshop in this series.